everybody.
Oh, sorry.
Well, delighted to be here, and I'm going to welcome my panelists. And we have Gregory, the CEO and founder of Alltold. We have Rochelle, Haynes, the managing director of Bloomberg Philanthropies. What work cities at results for America, and Michael, co-founder and chief strategy officer of Supergood. Now, of course, AI is really the defining issue of our day when it comes to leadership and leadership in work. But at the same time, there are issues to do with security, to do with risk, to do with biases, etc. But it offers an immense opportunity for all of us. And so here we have a panel of some pretty amazing people. I've read all your bios who are using AI to do good in different ways. And so what we want to do is break down the issue about AI and its importance, right, from their perspectives, then look at what it is they're doing, okay? So my first question is just very straightforward. And let's take a wide lens view, right? And it's already delivering sort of powerful outcomes, AI. But we would love to hear from you so that we can understand clearly, what do you think, or what in your view is AI, the power of AI, and how is it transforming our world? So what is important about AI in your view? So I start first really with, everyone talk about that, but Morgan, can you just tell us why is AI important? What is it about AI, in your view, that makes it so important to us today?
Sure, yeah, and I'll take this from the lens of media. So I focus a lot on media. Think ads, TV shows, movies, generative AI content, podcasts, you name it. And the reason that I think so much about media is because we truly feel that the media that we consume, the content that we consume every day, it influences the way that we think about each other. It influences the way that we treat each other, and it even impacts people's own beliefs about themselves. So it's a very, very powerful force in shaping our culture and our world. And when you can see Jose. And when we think about AI, it's playing a big role in shaping our media landscape, and therefore also our society and our world. And so, if you'll bear with me for just a minute, sure. There's two big inflection points that I've seen. And if we go way back, we'll go in our time machine way back, show of hands, who remembers a time before social media, right? Before streaming platforms, before TiVo and DVR, right? So if we think about that time back when, in my kids' opinions, the dinosaurs ruled the earth, but it was maybe only a couple decades ago, this was a time when we had a finite number of channels and TV shows that had to fit within certain time blocks on each channel. Yeah. So for better or for worse, we all watched the same thing at the same time. And I say for better or for worse because there wasn't a ton of inclusion and representation at that time, but we all kind of plugged into this cultural overstory. We talked about it the next day. It was unifying in some sense. Now, if we fast forward to the time when the iPhone came on the scene, social media started to kind of rise in popularity, what we saw then was a shift from a time when the content creators and distributors were a small set of people to anybody who could upload content. And so the benefit of that was that we saw a lot more diversity, a lot more representation within our media content, and streaming platforms as well. When we started seeing streaming platforms, a lot more opportunity to create more content, more programming, because we weren't limited by these time boxes on linear channels. But what we also saw was just this huge explosion in content, more content that we could ever consume. Content was uploaded in every minute and every hour, more content than we could ever consume in our lifetime. And so what we needed at that point was a way to figure out what we should watch. And so recommendation algorithms. So the first influence of AI on our media landscape was AI essentially telling us what we should be consuming. And so the promise of this was that it was personalized and positive. But we also saw the other side of that, which was it was a little bit divisive. It kind of put us into these filter bubbles. So it was an algorithm that was determining what we were watching. And so that was the first major inflection point, I think, in AI shaping our culture. And right now we're on the cusp of the next big influence of AI within our culture and our media, which is generative AI. And we're seeing now the first indications of generative AI kind of influencing our mainstream media. We're seeing the first ads that are fully AI generated. We're seeing partnerships between companies like Runway and Lionsgate to actually use generative AI in mainstream video and film, movies. And I think, again, that's democratizing. So there's benefits to this. You can create, new worlds and new, where was it in the last panel? Kind of new camera angles and new settings and sceneries that we couldn't do previously without huge budgets and time and expense and qualifications. We can do that just with a prompt. But what we also know is these models have a tendency to not just inherit, but to amplify the biases in their training data.
And I think that we'll get a chance. This is really important, and I think we need to. This is something we're going to talk about, some of those issues. But thank you very much. I think, one thing you talked about was the opportunities, the sort of the diversity, the representation, and moving away from homogeneity to heterogeneity, and that I think is really important for us. But that comes with it, other issues which we're going to discuss. We'll move over to Michael. So tell us. You tell us, we've had this conversation, a little bit of conversation earlier today, and with the work with young people here, but tell us, what are the opportunities in your view?
I think the biggest opportunity presented by AI is the removal of the barriers between the people who have ideas and the people who get to make ideas happen. And I think there is a lot to be concerned about with generative AI right now is what I'm talking about. There are other forms of AI. But the fact that more people being able to tell stories means that more stories will get told, I think is a net positive. And that's what I'm bullish on that.
I love that, the stories, right. Opportunity for people to share and tell their stories. Thank you. Rochelle. What are your thoughts? What are the biggest opportunities in your view?
Great. So I run a program called What Works Cities, and we work with cities in North, Central, and South America to build their data and evidence-based practices, right? And to be able to do that, you need a strong data infrastructure. About 2 years ago, our network started buzzing about AI. Now, we know AI has been around. I'm a former public servant. I used AI when I was managing New York City's homeless services system. We used predictive analytics. But generative AI has taken what was a sort of low-hanging conversation and sort of ricocheted all the way up. And what I'm loving that I'm seeing that our cities are doing is how can AI help them be better efficient at delivering services for residents, better connect with their residents, but also save lives. And so I'll give 2 quick examples. Sure. We know that climate change, extreme heat has become the norm, right? It's not something that happens every couple of 100 years or something. So in Austin, Texas, they are using AI cameras to help them detect wildfires. Wow. And so to be able to spot it. And then that allows emergency responders to get on top of it sooner. They can evacuate residents. That's a real tangible solution for AI. And I find that that's what our cities are excited about, is if the AI can help them deliver and deliver efficiently services, save lives, and save money as well. They're using it for flood sensors as well in Recife, Brazil. They're using AI to be able to detect where there's flooding. We know that flooding typically happens in vulnerable communities. And so if you're using AI sensors to be able to detect flooding, you're able to be able to engage those communities sooner and make sure they're safe. And so there's just some really purposeful design that is happening at the local government level. And I'm excited to see some of these models replicated. And of course, and I'm sure we'll touch on this, most of our cities are also thinking about ethics and governance as it relates to AI, right? But they're willing to test the model and be at the forefront in a way that I don't know that local government was before with other technology.
Thank you, Rochelle. You started off, looking at city efficiencies, but I love the word efficiencies. And we had, of course, I think it was Morgan who talked about information, right? So, you have informations, you have efficiencies, you have this sort of diversity, storytelling, so a multiplicity of things, right? And these are, amazing positives. And I think that, a lot of the talk now with AI, right, has to do with generative AI, right? So it's all that sort of creating, creating, now we can create text and videos and all of that, right? But putting this and giving those case studies really, I think, is really very helpful. But I wonder if we still have, do we have Jose on the line? No, we don't have Jose on the line, okay. But now, let's go into the way in which you're using AI in your organizations and in your jobs. So Morgan, tell us, give us case studies. What are you doing? What's exciting? Tell us.
So having given you the foundation of media and why this is important and the role that AI is playing. So what we're doing is we're essentially starting with quantifying and measuring inclusion and representation within media, with ads and TV shows and movies, and we're moving into generative AI content as well. So you have to first think about why would anybody care about that, right? Why are we a for-profit business and not a nonprofit business? And the reason for that is there have been a ton of industry reports from the World Economic Forum, from the UN, and from industry groups like the ANA that have shown that more inclusive advertising just performs better, has better business outcomes. Similarly, in film and TV, they've shown that more authentically inclusive representation makes more money at the box office, has higher Rotten Tomatoes scores, both for audiences and for critics. So it really does, this content does perform better. Now, the challenge that we saw initially was that how do you quantify and measure inclusion? So we started doing that, and it's an interesting case study. So we take the most viewed ads of every year, actually month, quarter, and year. We analyze them for inclusion, and then we'll publish industry reports. And so what we can see there is, for example, we'll take a look and we'll see that at a top line, we see close to parity when it comes to gender expression between feminine and masculine gender expressions across the most viewed ads. We don't see very many people who are gender nonconforming in ads, but close to gender expression parity between those two expressions, which to me was a really interesting finding. I wasn't expecting that. But then when we, that's kind of the first layer of the onion, and then we want to peel it back and see what's happening in the lower layers. And so when we intersect that, or when we look at that by vertical, the story changes a bit. So we see much higher representation of people with a feminine gender expression in fashion and beauty ads, right? In CPG household ads, in travel and tourism, and much lower representation when we get to QSR, when we get to food, wine, and beverage. And so seeing that allows us to identify these opportunities for more inclusive representation. Similarly, when we intersect gender expression with another identity attribute like age, we can see that although at the top level it looks like we've hit parity, what we actually see is that there's a lot more representation of people with a feminine gender expression under the age of 30 versus over. So that can also, what we're really trying to do is shine a light on the blind spots and uncover those opportunities where brands, where advertisers, where content creators might not be representing people that are in their target market. So we're showing them places where they can bring people into their creative and more authentically speak to those groups and from their perspective, sell better.
Thank you for that. I love I love this inclusion bit, and there are issues, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. I hope we do have time for that. Michael, for you, you've built an AI native creative agency, which is a sort of a future-facing concept. How would you see the contribution of human creativity and AI transforming brand innovation in a more responsible and authentic way? You did touch on there are issues, so responsibility, authenticity.
Yeah, I'll address the second part first, okay. and then I'll talk about sort of why we're doing this. So the way that you address the issues that AI has with representation or bias or any of the many issues that not just AI but any form of creative process has. Is with human intervention. So there's only one way to do it, and that is to have people review what you're making. And so we've built a platform. It's an AI-powered platform. It's a data-powered platform. The data doesn't get to go to the AI without a human intervening. AIs don't make things and send them anywhere without a human intervening. There's a human in the loop at every step of the way because that's the only way to a human judgment. There's no replacement for human judgment.
Right.
Yet. The reason why, though, I think is important to talk about because it doesn't get talked about much. So we built this AI-powered advertising agency because the advertising industry itself is in really tough shape. You have massive downward pressure on pricing because there's a ton of competition and there's more competition emerging from more places and every day. You have upward pressure on costs because people's wages rise because that's what wages do. The only solution for that is a technology solution. And then it's like, well then, like, who cares? Like, let the advertising industry die. Like, who gives a damn? But the advertising industry actually matters. Like, it supports the open and free internet. It is the only white-collar trade that I am aware of in the States. Like, you don't need to graduate from college to do advertising. Like, it has an important role to play in social mobility. And, like, it matters. And I mean, putting aside the fact that it's actually the only thing that I'm qualified to do is advertising, and like, you know, so I was kind of stuck, you know, like that was kind of like, all right, man, well, that's what you know how to do. But it's actually like the industry itself matters. And so we're taking a run at changing it by making it more economically sustainable with these technologies and with this platform, because we do think it matters.
Thank you. We'll move to Rochelle. Some of the issues, right? And it's not just the issues, but it's the solutions. So Michael has already started us on that. And, you know, when we talk about artificial intelligence, you know, it's this external manufactured thing that has intelligence that is not only mimicking human beings, but with AGI could even surpass human intelligence. But Michael has brought us back to a certain reality, which I love. That is human intervention that is going to deal with those issues that we're seeing. In your work, which is sort of fascinating with cities, what do you see as some of the solutions to the issues? So we're talking solutions here, not just problems.
Yeah, so first, I love that, Michael, you brought up the piece around humans are still needed. And I think when we have this conversation around AI, people shut down because they think that machines are going to replace jobs. And immediately it becomes, well, I don't want to talk to a machine, or I really like my job, I don't want to be replaced by a machine. But what we're finding is AI is not a human. You can't replace soul, you can't replace judgment. And in our community, what we're seeing our cities are doing is they're testing AI models, right? But they're engaging the community and they're making the community part of it. And so in San Jose, California, they're leaning all the way in on AI. They're allowing their staff to use it with governance, of course, but they also build a large language model to do translation. When it first rolled out, it was producing culturally insensitive comments, right? It was given incorrect information. The community was engaged and gave that feedback. Then San Jose partnered with another developer to create a new solution tool and actually are training the model with community input. That's what like human-centered design for AI is all about. And so for me, when I think of this question, for AI, the future inclusion, we need to think about how are we engaging everyone in that conversation, but also how we're engaging people in the development, but also on the other side, residents to inform the models. And we're seeing some good examples.
This, I think, is an excellent point, because when we think of AI, you think of the biggest AI companies and think of them as private sector. But if we look at this as a collective responsibility of all of us, right? You know, as users, as communities, in terms of governance, right? And this is certainly a way to sort of deal with some of the issues that we're seeing. So thank you for that. I think that the next question, I think Jose, I think is not with us. What I see, I'm conscious of time, but I'm not sure which way the time is going.
We're okay though.
We're okay with time. Okay. And right, so let's look at, you know, the future we need, the future of AI and future of humans in the AI, right? And if everyone is to participate and to benefit from the AI revolution and evolution, really, what exactly, or what do you think, what is the one thing that needs to happen for everybody to truly benefit from the AI revolution and evolution? Morgan.
I'm going to kind of amplify what Rochelle was just saying.
Sure.
I think if we all pay attention to how AI is built, right, and the participation from certain communities within that. So an example, So we don't actually use LLMs in our technology right now. We've built our own computer vision models. We've trained them. We started with partnering with experts and advocacy groups from day one. So we partnered with GLAAD, Respectability, with university professors. My co-founder and I were at Google previously. We worked on the Monk skin tone scale with Dr. Alice Monk from Harvard, and did a lot of participatory research with communities of different skin tones to make sure that the scale is reflective of their needs. So starting really building those partnerships with the communities that would be affected, with the experts and the advocacy groups within those, and then thinking about what you actually can and cannot measure, not just with AI, but as a human. As an example, you've heard me say gender expression. It's because I can't look at a person and tell what their gender identity is, right? That's an internally held identity attribute that people don't usually go around being like, hi, I'm Morgan, I identify as a woman, thank you, right? So we do gender expression because often we only have visual cues to go based on. So it's how we're perceiving somebody to be expressing a gender. So, and there are so many steps involved here. Then what is the language that we use? How do we describe each of the options? How do we have reference images? What do those look like? How do we train our annotation team? Because AI starts with humans. Even when you're building your own AI models, it starts with humans looking at things and labeling them, right, annotating them. And so thinking about end to end, right, what does your training model look like? What's the distribution? What's the representation within it? What does your evaluation data set look like? And all of these things go into making a responsible and accurate model. And if we all kind of understand what responsible AI development looks like and know how to evaluate vendors based on that, know what questions to ask, then we can start to collectively kind of put more pressure on these LLMs, on these large AI labs, to say this is important to us collectively. And I think that, I think we can sometimes get stuck thinking about, well, that's just OpenAI that's building that, and unless I go work there, I can't affect change. But I think we can if we start to ask these questions and signal that as consumers, these are important to us in the vendors and the products that we're going to use.
Thank you. So yes, we can. We can have influence and we can make change happen. But you talked about your own your language models. So we talk about LLMs. And Michael, just changing a little bit, are we going to start looking at from LLMs to SLMs, smaller, or ELLMs, extra large LLMs, or DLMs, diverse? Tell me, what are your thoughts?
I'm not sure what the next few years of models will look like. I know that I know what's being trained right now. I mean, I read what's in the press like everybody else. I think back to your original question of what it's gonna take.
Yeah.
In order to make sure everybody gets the benefits of this stuff. I think the first most foundational thing is access to it. I think an education system that is discouraging kids from engaging AI is it's insane. They're using it. That's the dumbest thing. It's like abstinence, just don't do it. What are you talking about? It's right. It's right there. It's like abstinence, it doesn't make any sense. So I think access to it, embracing it, just lean into it. I think that's one thing. I think another thing is I'm bummed that all the big model makers are private. I think DARPA started the internet, and maybe not DARPA, but I mean I think there should be a publicly funded LLM. Why is the U.S. government not in the LLM business? We're in the oil business, why not? And then I think the last thing I would say is everybody talks about AI, but AI runs on data. And data is the gas that the AI engine consumes. And I think control of and protection of your own data is a really, really important thing for people as they get, as we enter a world in which, as I was saying earlier, the barriers to storytelling, the barriers to creation are coming down, the barriers to rooting around in huge obscure data stacks are also coming down, and that's not good for privacy. And so I think control of and protection of your own data is another thing we're all gonna want. 10, 15 years from now?
Thank you, Michael. So I like this. It's not, we don't have a generation, the Gen A. We actually have a Gen AI. Public, governance and public creation of AI is important, and your data. We're out of time, but Rochelle, we could just end with you.
Sure.
What do we need? What do we need to happen? What needs to happen in your own view?
Absolutely. Great. So I feel like we didn't prepare this, Mike, but you're teeing me up really well today. So you mentioned data.
Yeah.
Right.
And so for me, when I think about the future, it's data capacity and data management.
Right.
I think these conversations around AI have to really focus on building the capacity of everyone to be good stewards of data, the way that we manage it, collect it, store it, but also to make sure people have access, and access comes with digital literacy. And so for me, and our role and what I see is us being able, What Works Cities being able to continue to provide capacity building assistance to help local governments be able to do this. Because if we can help them do this, then they can democratize the way people access local government. And that for me is the heart of AI right now. It's changing the way people interact with their local governments and makes it accessible 24/7. And that's the future. And so, especially when you're thinking about efficiency, limited resources, folks need access, and so we're here to help build that capacity.
Rochelle, thank you for finishing this up for us. And when you have amazing people who are here talking about AI, we could go on forever. We'd love to, but we have to wrap it up. But inclusion, sort of diversity, the media, public governance, the youth. Access, collaboration, these are some of the themes that we've heard today. And AI is really something that is here for all of us, and it shouldn't be something looked at that is just created by individual big organizations. And we need to take a part in it, not just as users, right, but as shaping the future of AI. And this is what I hear from our amazing speakers today. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.